Sometimes all it takes for me to play a game is a cool little gameplay gimmick, and that was what was on display when I saw some marketing material and such for the Plucky Squire. The game's main gimmick is that the story of the game takes place in a children's storybook, but through happenings of the story, you gain the ability to leap out of the book and explore the real world, then hop back in, usually after finding something to help you out in the book, all while changing the animation from 2D when in the book and 3D while in the real world. And I'm an easy sell on some things, so after seeing that, I decided I would check the game out when it was released. Now, given the presentation for this game and whatnot, I was fully aware this was being targeted as a children's game, so I knew as soon as I first saw the advertising and stuff that it was likely going to be an easy play with some basic mechanics and a simple story that would be rather predictable for someone like me. Nonetheless, though, I decided to jump in regardless of if I'm the target demographic or not. And let's just say this is a bit more of a kid's game than I originally thought, and personally, that took away from my personal enjoyment from the game. But I want to lay out some things in more detail, so let's jump into the world and storybook of the Plucky Squire. The Plucky Squire was developed by All Possible Futures, published by Devolver Digital, and was released on September 17th, 2024 for Windows PCs, PS5, Xbox Series consoles, and Nintendo Switch. I played it on PC, purchased through Steam, so all footage you are seeing is from the PC version recorded using OBS Studio. I also played a good chunk of this on my Lenovo Legion Go, and it was most definitely playable, 110%, but there were some occasional frame and smoothness hiccups that happened enough for me to mention it, which I find very shocking given how simplistic this game is visually. But like I said, still totally playable on the Lenovo Legion Go at the end of the day. In the Plucky Squire, you play as Jot, aka the Plucky Squire. Jot lives in the land of Mojo, and not only lives in it, but is the land's champion and seeming protector. However, for every hero, there is a villain, and Jot's villain is Humgrump, an evil sorcerer looking to take over the land of Mojo. As Jot goes about the usual stopping of Humgrump, Humgrump reveals a new ace up his sleeve, a staff full of meta magic. Using the staff and its magic, he boots Jot out of the book. However, Jot, being the brave adventurer that he is, works his way back into the book. And then, with the help of not only his newfound power to leave and re-enter the book at will, but also his friends throughout the book, Jot seeks out to defeat Humgrump and restore happiness to the land of Mojo. Starting out this game, I obviously had to go through the start of the game, and I immediately found myself quite bored. Now, I've been playing games long enough to know that the beginning of a game is oftentimes the most boring part of it. I get it. And quite frankly, it's what I expect nowadays. However, with the Plucky Squire, it was a little more boring and slow than usual. For instance, like I said, the whole gimmick of this game is being able to hop between the book and the real world. However, you do not leave the book for the first time until about an hour into the game. Typically not an issue, but I was able to beat the game in just under 8 hours, which means I spent the first 12.5% of the game without experiencing its main gimmick. And the pacing issues wouldn't stop there. In fact, I think the pacing is my main issue with this game. When in the book world, you progress through the land by going through the pages of the book. And the game animates this. Once you finish the requirements of like the 2 pages that are open on the book and leave the area, the game zooms out, shows the book turning a page before placing you back in control of Jot. This in and of itself isn't much of an issue. What I feel is the issue is that nearly every page turn begins with a conversation with someone, often lasting for like 60 seconds or so, sometimes longer. I say all this because I really feel like this causes very inconsistent pacing in the game. I would go constantly from fighting to puzzle solving to talking, all so frequently. I feel it would prevent me from really getting into the flow of things with this game. It just seemed a little all over the place and inconsistent, and made the game kinda hard to play at times if I'm being entirely honest. Where there was a lot less pacing issues was in the real world, aka the 3D areas of the game. And because of this, along with other factors, I found myself enjoying the 3D gameplay sections a lot more than the 2D ones. You are quite a small little dude, but this made for a lot of cool creativity within the level design here, oftentimes running across building blocks and notebooks to get to your destination. I also like the way the transition mechanic worked more when in 3D adventures. Sometimes while in the book, you have to go into the 3D world in order to solve a puzzle within the book, then hop back into the book. Well, the same goes for the 3D world, except kind of reverse the order. You often have to jump into 2D space, usually in the form of sticky notes, to solve a puzzle or travel across the landscape, then jump back out into the 3D world. Pair that with the better pacing and what I feel was the more creative sections of the game, I found myself much more drawn to the 3D adventures. Too bad this is only about, 40% of the game or so. But personally to me, the Plucky Squire shines brightest in its minigame sections. This was when I found myself having the most fun with this game. In the Plucky Squire, as you progress through the story, the game will throw little minigame sections at you that, quite frankly, are nothing like the rest of the game. For instance, there's a part that mimics a basic version of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, a part that is like Super Bust-a-Move, which, holy hell, talk about a game I haven't thought of in a while. This game really brought that memory out of the depths of my mind, as well as many others. And they don't necessarily mimic other games every time. Sometimes it's just a simple gameplay change. There was enough minigames and gameplay shakeups that the culmination of all this reminded me of It Takes Two. It Takes Two was a solid co-op game from 2021 and actually won Game of the Year. But that game was filled with little minigames and gameplay shakeups to go along with the typical gameplay loop. I definitely enjoyed that game, so for the Plucky Squire to remind me of it, they most definitely did at least one thing right. Lastly, two little things I want to mention right at the end here. Toomba was my favorite character in the whole game, despite only being present for like an hour or so, maybe. His name could be Tumba. It is spelled T-U-M-B-A, but he lived on a beach where I pictured everyone having Jamaican accents, so I called him Toomba. Also, I thought it was a funny touch when it was someone's turn to step up to the plate, or aka hero time for all my Shrek 2 video game fans out there. You'd hear clothes rip and it would show the person sleeveless and very jacked. I just thought it was like a funny little touch.
Just prepared for a dust-up.
And that's really all I have to say about this game, at least the main talking points. But the Plucky Squire was just overall more boring than I expected it to be quite frank. The combat was wildly simple, the story was very basic and predictable, and chief among it all, like I said, was the pacing issues. And I know I'm a grown man playing a kid's game, but that's nothing that I not only have done before, but enjoyed. Take a look at my time with SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. Hell, even Cosmic Shake was a reasonably fun time. And let's not forget Astrobot, one of the best games I have played recently. Link in the description if you want to check that one out. And I don't have a problem with simple games either. Jasant was a very pleasant few hours, and Stray damn near almost brought me to tears. But something was just missing from most of the Plucky Squire to really hook me in. I was often so bored with this game, I frequently found myself having to work up the courage, for lack of a better term, of wanting to play it. I think this game is just more targeted for kids than I originally thought. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Gaming is a hobby that should be enjoyed by all, no matter the age. But the Plucky Squire is just more targeted towards kids than I originally thought. But if you are someone who doesn't like to be pushed to the edge when gaming and a much more just of a laid-back casual experience that doesn't require too much effort, the Plucky Squire might be worth a look. And I don't mean that to come across spiteful in any way. There's a very solid need for those types of games and gamers. However, after playing through, the Plucky Squire is a book that I will put on my shelf and leave there for a while. Yeah, I was a little disappointed with this one, I'm not gonna lie, especially with what I am playing next. But before we get to that, thank you so much for your time and attention watching this video. I appreciate it. If you like this video, don't forget that thumbs up button. It goes a long way for us here at Milkman Media. Next, I am going to be tackling the recent Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. Dead Rising is a game whose concept was made with me in mind, just stuck in a mall, and you gotta use what's there to survive and fight and survive and whatnot. But it was always so janky that I struggled to play it. but this new remaster might nudge it over the line of playability for me, so I'm going to give it a go. So make sure you subscribe and turn on post notifications by hitting that bell so you don't miss that video, other game videos, or any of the food videos I put out. Lastly, let's talk Plucky Squire in the comments. I always want to know what other people think about the games I play, but it gets a little more interesting when it's a game I don't enjoy. So please let me know your thoughts, or we can always talk about whatever game you are playing. I like to talk about games, so, you know, no holds barred in the comments, I guess. I'll talk to you there for now, but as always, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.